Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man Podcast. My name's Rory Paquette. I know you know that. I just like to remind myself about how grateful I am to be sitting in this chair today. Folks, as we record this, we're coming off of, churches being shot up and burned down. We're still dealing with, the death of Charlie Kirk. We're dealing with all kinds of other things that have sort of rocked our worlds and hit us hard. Folks, it is more important now than ever that you dig into something that means something to you, that you find something in your life that rings true, and that you get straight with your values and you take care of your house. And that's one of the things that we work on very hard here on this show. So I want to wish you all the best in doing that, and I hope that our episodes bringing these powerful men on here to do what they do are going to really help you do that. When we went to the 7 days a week a while ago, you folks just showed up like crazy. I know we've missed a couple episodes here or there. I tried to farm some stuff out to staff. I want to apologize to all you guys. Never doing that again. So I'm going to be on top of this from here on out, making sure I'm getting it all done myself. And we will not miss another one. You guys are going to be in good shape. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart for all your support and getting us where we are today. All right, now, enough of that. I'm sure you guys are already bored. Let me just move on. If you're a friend of the program, and I know you are, then you know what's coming next. We got to pay a couple of bills, right? So let me get a sip of my preferred beverage. Man, good stuff. You guys all know what we're drinking. That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look them up, check them out. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful, just like my wife. They brew a mean cup of Joe, folks. It's an absolutely fantastic cup of coffee. They do all the right things for all the right reasons, and they support veterans, which you all know is incredibly important to us here at the Power Man Podcast. If you're a veteran out there, I want to thank you and your family for your service. You're the only reason we get to sit here and have these opinions. Folks, go support them. Check them out. Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Tell them Power Man sent you. Let me get one more sip of this so I can keep up with this young buck on the other side of the table from me today. All right. I was privileged enough to have this young man on the podcast with me on one of my other shows. And he ran circles around me there. Pretty sure he's going to leave me in the dust here. So give me a little grace. I'm going to do my best to keep up with this guy. His stories have stories. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be a great podcast for you guys. Please welcome author, speaker, trainer, consultant on the warrior servant leader mindset. He's also the host of the Warrior Servant Leader podcast. He pens the Warrior Servant Leader community newsletter. He's written two books, The Warrior Servant Leader, Life Behind the Badge, and The Warrior Servant Leader, Life Behind the Cross. Folks, I think you can already tell that this gentleman belongs on this podcast with us today. And get ready because it's going to be an awesome episode. Please welcome Pat Welsh. Pat, how are you doing, brother?
Rory, doing great. Thanks for having me. And I think you're right. People probably ought to buckle up because this one's going to be fun.
Looking forward to it. I don't always get to do a trial run with somebody on another podcast and then bring them on this one. So
Yeah.
I love that, and I know that you're prepared and you're ready. You and I talked about some really important stuff last time. Talked about faith and some things like that. You have a lot of messages. You got a lot to dig in. Before we get into all that, just give everybody an idea. Who is Pat Welsh? What are you about? What brings you here today, brother?
Sure. Uh, and thanks for calling me a young man. I mean, I'm going to be 68 in a couple of weeks. So I accept the compliment with great humility.
Right on.
So yeah, I did things kind of butt backwards. I was actually an assistant DA. I'd been trying cases for 4 years, from everything from jaywalking to murder. And I was 28 years old, came home one evening after being at the office all day. My wife's like, Marilyn says to me, she goes, "Man, you're kind of pissy every time you come home. What do you really want to be doing?" And I said, "Well, I wanted to be a cop since I was like 9 years old." She said, "Then go do it." So we're still married. We just celebrated 45 years earlier this month. So she's put up with me through a ton of crap. And I did a 26, 27-year sworn law enforcement career, and I've continued. I retired 12 years ago, 13 years ago, and have stayed in that world, both as a trainer and a consultant. I spent 3 years working as a civilian investigator on a undercover unit with Colorado Springs PD, and I just worked human trafficking cases. So kind of like I shared with you before we jumped on. It's really been part of my meditating time, my quiet time, this whole evil versus good that we're experiencing in like rapid succession over the last month or so. And so that's kind of what my whole warrior servant leader mindset has always been about, is standing in that gap between good and evil, whether it's at work or at home or in your faith life and your community life. So that's Reader's Digest version.
Reader's Digest version, no kidding. Now I love this where you just told me about this today, this standing in the gap
Hmm.
idea. I love it. Tell us a little bit more. I know you're on Substack. You've written this piece. Let's dive into that right off the bat, and let's talk about that mindset because that really does play into everything else that you do and everything that you're about. Sounds like.
Yeah, it is. Evil is definitely in our midst, and people go, well, what is evil? And if you ask that, particularly in the faith community, people are real quick, man. They'll go straight to Timothy, first letter of Timothy. The root of all evil, or the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And I really reflected on that, and I'm like, no, evil's a lot more. The love of money is just a symptom. And I think what we're facing, the evil that we're called to stand in the gap against, is ego, greed, and hatred. Those three things are kind of, in my book, the root of all evil. And if you're, spend time as a cop in the military, if you're in a combat unit, you know what I'm talking about. And you can look somebody in the eye and just go, okay, uh, I'm in the face of evil. But evil doesn't always come in that black clothes and the spinning heads in the
Right.
Exorcist movie and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it it comes in simple things. Over ambition to succeed, and you put your success above faith and family. That's an influence of evil. I mean, C.S. Lewis was just brilliant in writing the screw tape letters and talking about how insidious and how quietly the devil can get into our lives, and we miss it until you get served with the divorce papers or your world just falls apart for whatever reasons. And so that's kind of for the last, man, it's probably been about 15 years now that I have worked on my own self of developing a warrior servant leader mindset. And I mean, I study Sun Tzu and the Art of War. I've studied great, spiritual gifted St. Augustine or St. Augustine, depending on how you want to say it. Uh, uh, just all sorts of John Maxwell does a great job of communicating a lot of these principles. And so that's what I've spent the last 15, 20 years, is developing it in myself and then trying to bring that message to other people. And particularly for me, it's been in the world of law enforcement because in the and military, I'm not a veteran. We are a Gold Star family.
Mhm.
Uh, and but I've trained thousands of security forces and military police in the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, and all geared towards this mindset, not to make you simply a better cop or a better soldier, but to be a better father, husband, wife, mother, sibling, a person of faith, because they're all intertwined. You can't be loving and a you know a cuddly bear at home and then be a total asshole when you go to work. If you are, then you got psychological problems and you need some help. And I actually years ago I wrote an article in Law Enforcement Today, and it was titled "I effing hate people," and And the first three sentences is I was writing that why cops have this us versus them mentality, or and even in the military you see it. And and then the very first sentence of the second paragraph is if you genuinely effing hate people, A, you're in the wrong career, and two, you're getting other cops hurt. Your attitude, because it could be you could be 6'4", 240 and all muscle, and you have that attitude in treating people on the job, and they go, man, I can't take this guy. But then they get that 5'3", uh, female officer who is outgoing and this, that, and the other thing, and in their mind they're going, I can take her, so I'm going to take my hatred towards you out on this person. And that's not a mindset to have, that us versus them. So
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, wow. You're talking about a lot of you unpacked a lot right there, brother. That's a lot. Before we go further, I do want to point out, you mentioned you're a Gold Star family, and I always make sure that I thank veterans and their families because you all serve. And I want to thank you and your son
thank you.
for your service. I know you lost your son,
Thank,
in
thank,
service. I
thank you.
don't. We have a lot of veterans in this program, and I know they all understand that 100%. As we move forward, wow, I mean, 30 years of frontline law enforcement, okay, leading into the development of the whole warrior servant leader, idea. You've definitely demonstrated the warrior servant leader mindset and practice and everything else. Um, the, that part on Substack. I'm really looking forward to reading. Unfortunately, I didn't hear about it till this morning, or I would have read it already. But I'm looking forward to it. The idea that we stand between, that we stand in that gap, that we're
Yeah.
between, evil and what's behind us. I think people kind of forget that sometimes, that it isn't just our job to protect ourselves, but it's also our job to protect the people that are counting on us. The people who depend on us, like need that protection. And so I love the idea of standing in the gap. Um, is that where your mind was protecting families and things like that? Or, were you thinking about protecting community? Were you thinking about just protecting society? Or was this a battle that you're thinking about in your mind of, you versus evil on your own, brother?
No, when I first started, because I was 28 years old when I first became a police officer, so I'd gotten a little bit of that, TV movie uh, uh, picture of cops out of my head. But and this whole mindset thing, it is a daily battle, period. I mean, it's not like you ever arrive, because life gets in the way and things happen, and you can easily start down a different a path. And when I first got into law enforcement, I was a headhunter. I mean, all I wanted to do was take dope and guns and bad guys and gangbangers off the
Mm.
street. And I spent of my 26 years with Dayton, Ohio PD, 13 of it I was on midnights. So I mean, I was a midnight rat, and that in itself was a struggle because then I became an absent parent during the daytime because I was sleeping. And my wife didn't tell me until because and you military wives and law enforcement wives out there know exactly what I'm talking about is you suck it up because you're standing behind your spouse, and you could be the husband whose wife is a cop, and you suck it up of feeling that loneliness of being a single parent almost, or that your spouse is married to the job and not to you. And that was a big struggle for me because I was so personality driven to take bad guys off the street. I've been on over, I had homicide work for me for 3 years. I mean, I've been on hundreds of murder scenes, and you just get consumed with that. And 24/7, that is kind of your driving purpose in life. And it took me years to get to the point of realizing, no, being in law enforcement is not who I am, it's what I do. And so it took me a while to adjust to who I am influences how I do what I do, as opposed to being driven by the circumstances and what we had to deal with as cops in an urban environment.
Yeah.
It's a growing, and I've been retired for 13 years, and it's still having that warrior. Let me explain just so everybody understands, because
Sure.
I get pushback. I actually get pushback from a lot of police executives that, oh, we don't like the word warrior. We want to be guardians. And I so much the Irish in me, and you know this. I was born in Ireland. I'm 100%, Irish Catholic. I have no filter, and I so want to say to these police executives, have you ever looked at a guard dog? They're mean as F, and they bite. And their sole job is to keep the intruders out, protect whoever the protectee is. And that's a guard dog. I really don't think you want your people to be guard dogs. This is why I say you need a warrior mindset, because this is my definition of a warrior. It's a person who stands up, shows up, and defends what they believe. It doesn't have to be a cop. It doesn't have to be in military. You could be a CPA, an accountant, a bagger of groceries, and as long as you stand up, show up, and defend what you believe, in my book, you're a warrior. And that's just one hat that you wear. And here's the difficult part, is wearing all three hats at the same time and knowing when to transition from, hey, I'm in a life-threatening situation on the street. That's not the time to develop rapport and, where'd you go to school and try to connect with you. That's the time to take care of business, and you do it. And you have those skill sets to take care of business. But the servant part is, a servant is someone who puts the wants and needs of others before their own. And if you're a parent, man, you have a lifetime of doing that, raising your kids, especially when they leave the nest and then boomerang back, you know, uh, and, and that's a servant, is simply put it, being able to be empathetic enough to see the pain and suffering of somebody else, and then compassionate enough to do something about it. And then a leader is real simple. You are a person of influence and impact in somebody else's life. It's not about bars, stars, and stripes. It's not about being the quarterback on the team, and having the C. You're the offensive captain. That's positional leadership. And that comes and goes. True leadership is that you live your life in a way that impacts in a positive way and influences other people, even if you never know what impact that was.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
that's when I say about standing in the gap, it is being situationally aware. And I don't mean paranoid, but having that, I've just started trying to understand and practice mindfulness, because I always thought, that's for eggheads. That was kind of my impression. But I'm actually going through a 30-day journey challenge with a former monk. And when you say a kid, this guy is a kid. He's 23, 24 years old, and he's working on his PhD.
Wow.
And he's mentoring Catholic students. He's from California, but he's mentoring Catholic students at Oxford University in England, and mentoring them in keeping your Catholicism, keeping your faith, not getting distracted by what's going on as you are in another country, studying and all that kind of stuff. So I've been on a 30-day, I'm 2 weeks into it, and he's really opened my mindset, and given me some clarity on this warrior servant leader. And this standing in the gap is being conscientiously and intentionally living your life, and not doing Kermit the Frog in the meme, drinking the tea, none of my business.
Right.
And it's not being a busybody and being nosy, but it is literally looking for and doing something about the least, the last, and the lost that you see every day. And to put it into perspective in my lifetime and yours, for me, the biggest example of all three of these mindsets interacting and on a daily basis by a person that did not have to do it is Mother Teresa of Calcutta, who's now Saint Teresa of
Mhm.
Calcutta in the Catholic Church. And so that's kind of my vision, my mission, my purpose, in going on podcasts and writing books and doing the training and consulting, is bringing people to that realization of, hey, this is a very healthy and productive mindset to have, and you will be happier, you will be more successful, and you will find more peace in your life if you have that not ego-centered mindset, but looking out and going, hey, how can I make a difference in this world? As simple as it may be. A friend of mine, he's actually a deacon at our church yesterday. He gave a homily, and they were going to a Colorado Rockies game, and there was a homeless guy. And Deacon David has, I mean, he's epitomizes this whole concept. He goes, so we're headed to the game, and I see this homeless guy. He's got a sign, anything will help. And I tell my buddy I'm going to the game with, hey, give that guy $10. He goes, and my friend goes, well, won't he just spend it on alcohol? And Deacon David goes, I looked at him and said, that's what we were going to spend it on, beer. So give him the $10. But it's that mindset that he could see that that homeless guy was not just part of the landscape or invisible.
Right.
And you live your life intentionally that way, it makes an incredible difference in how you see the world and how you actually enjoy your life. I call it reduces the placidity level, your pissed offness at, at the world, and you just become not monk-like, but you become more Christ-like.
Yeah. It's amazing stuff, brother. I mean, unfortunately, it seems like it's so very rare because I think most people will walk up to that ball game thinking, like guy number two in that scenario. Like, well, if I give him money, he's just gonna fill in the blank. Buy booze with it, waste it, whatever. And most of us don't go in there with that
All
certain
right.
mentality going, look, this guy obviously needs help.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I did this for years. Uh, in my cruiser, I'd have day old donuts. I'd go to Dunkin' Donuts at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I know people are going, "Hey, yeah, typical cop." No, I was getting a bag of donuts, and I had energy bars. I carried a pack of cigarettes. I didn't smoke, but when I would come across, the guys standing around the trying to keep warm, with the trash can fire thing, or even girls, the prostitutes working the streets and whatnot, and I'd pull up and go, "Hey, are you hungry? I got some donuts here, or I got a candy bar, or do you want a cigarette?" And then I would just treat them like a human being. But the cop in me was also going, because they would always ask for another cigarette when I'm getting ready to leave. And I would say, well, tell me something I don't know. And they'd go, well, that girl down the street there, Peaches, she got a warrant on her. So I was doing my job, but I was doing it in a way where I wasn't treating folks as a them when I'm part of the community and they're part of the community.
Yeah.
But that I'm
Yeah.
telling you, I didn't start out that way. I mean, I was a head splitting, head hunting, just going after bad guys all the time. And I finally came to the realization is that's why cops life expectancy after they retire is like only 5 years because you're under all that stress and you just take it personally.
Wow. You know, it's interesting to hear you describe it that way. What changed, man?
Um, what first changed me was a simple, it was in, well, it was two things. 13 years into my career, so 1999, a book came out called Danger, Duty, and Disillusion, A Worldview of the LAPD by Joan Barker. You can still get it on Amazon. If you're in law enforcement, that should be mandatory reading. And it actually, I'm reading the book and I'm like, damn, this lady knows who I am. Because I'm not going to tell you about the book, but it, she was saying things in there that I saw in myself and where that path was going to take me. So that was one thing. The other thing was a leadership class by a Marine Corps veteran. Did about 5 years as a state trooper in Alaska. He lives in Santa Claus, Indiana now. His name's William Stanton Westfall, Bill Westfall, and he put on this 80-hour class. And the gist of the class was, and I actually have written permission from him to use this on my challenge coins, and in my writings and in my teachings, is always strive to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons. And those two things really impacted me. And it also got my attention that as far as my faith life was going, and I'm a cradle Catholic. I've never even been to public school, all the way through law school Catholic, is my faith life was in the shitter because I wasn't doing the right things at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons. So that was kind of my epiphany moment in 1999, the late 90s. And then since then, just growing through experiences. I told you I was going to tell you about shooting a chair in my office. I'm going to tell you the leadership lesson I learned from there. But even in the more serious things, my wife was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in '04, and if I had not made that pivot and transition in my faith life, that time period would have been like incredibly awful. But so in it was early 2000. It was pre 9/11. We're going to go on vacation. We lived in Ohio. Closest beach was Hilton Head, South Carolina. So we would take the kids. We had 5 kids. We'd take the kids there every year for a vacation. So I know we're gonna be. This was a Thursday, and we were gonna leave on Saturday. So I never carried my backup gun. I was a commander, a district commander. So I was in uniform, so I just always had my duty weapon, and I had my backup gun was in a locked closet in my office, and I had a nice office. I had a conference table with 10 chairs, two visitor chairs at my desk chair, nice office. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna take the off-duty gun on vacation, and so I unlocked a closet, and it's up on a shelf, which is taller than me. So I reach up, grab the gun, reach up my other hand, grab the spare magazine, and I I'm looking for it. Well, it wasn't supposed to be the spare magazine. It was the magazine supposed to be in the gun. So then I'm looking, where's the round I had racked out that should be? I can't. The round's not up there. So I just go on autopilot, and so I got got the magazine, the clip in one hand, and I just rack out the round that's in. It's a clock,
Okay.
nine. Back then we were carrying the 9 millimeter. I rack out the round, so I got the magazine and the round in one hand, and I now have a cocked uh, weapon in my right hand. And it doesn't have a hammer, and so just autopilot from police training, pointed in a safe direction, which happened to be at the seat of the chair at the conference table, and I pulled the trigger. I couldn't hear for 3 days because I didn't have the ear protection on. uh, when when I pulled the trigger, it went kaboom, and the round going into the chair was a small 9 millimeter round. When I flipped the chair over, the exit was pretty good size, and I had a concrete floor with thin carpet on it, and that round hit the carpet and ricocheted underneath my desk and hit a we had what he called cinder block walls. And I'm just like, what the hell just happened? And I had two doors into my office. One led to the secretary's area and the public area. Fortunately, there was no visitors out there, but my secretary was. And I find out later she just like froze and sat still, did not know what to do. Then the other door went to the hallway that had some of my sergeant's offices and to the roll call room and back into the locker room and the in the employee parking lot area. So my sergeant kind of peeks his head around the corner, and he thought I just shot myself, and he's like, "Are you okay, boss?" And I go, "Yeah, accidental discharge." And he goes, "Okay." So now I got to call my major, my superintendent, to report, I had an accidental discharge. He tells me to call internal affairs, and I'm like, "Aren't you supposed to do that?" And he goes, "I'm not the one that pulled the trigger. You call him." And so I called internal affairs, and they sent a detective out. And I'm going to get a written reprimand, which I richly deserve. And so he comes out. I tell him what happened. He says, type up your report and send it to me. So I do. So now I got to come back to work the next day. And I'm thinking, man, what a bonehead I am. I had eight or 10 sergeants working for me. I had probably 60, 70 cops, my my secretary. Excuse me. So I park in the employee parking lot, even though I had a parking spot right out front where the public could park that said, reserved for district commander. But I wanted to park with my folks. So I came through the roll call room, past the sergeant's offices, and I get to my office. And on the wall, taped on the wall next to the locked door, is this typed message that says, "If the lieutenant invites you into the office to have a seat, politely decline and remain standing." And so I had a little bit of a chuckle. And I opened my office, unlocked my door, opened my office. Every single chair in my office, so 13 chairs in my office, had bullseye targets taped to them. And then on my desk was a little 3x5 card next to a clear plastic recipe box. I mean, if your mom had one,
Yeah.
uh, and it was filled with ashes. And the typed message said, "Here lie the remains of the chair executed on," and it had yet the date on it from the day before. And then next to that was another 3x5 card, also typed. Because if anybody hand wrote anything, I'd figure out, who did it. But was next to that was a plastic dart gun and two darts with a type note that said, "Lieutenant, this might be safer for you to take on vacation." And so, yeah, so I'm laughing and,
Yeah.
but then it hit me. Who the hell has keys to my office? So, uh, so I kept all that for a long time, but the leadership lesson that I learned from that was, um, that the folks that I was responsible for, I was their boss, but I worked with, had a sense of humor about a boneheaded thing that their boss did, and they could have some fun with the boss knowing I wasn't going to get pissed off,
Yeah.
and that they understand it was a mistake. It was an accident, have some fun with it and move on. And so that when I talk about leadership, I'm talking about developing that kind of relationship with folks that you work with, work for, encounter on a regular basis, because you're having an impact on how they respond to difficult situations.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, they knew, everybody knew a written reprimand was the minimum, and I was going to get one. But you know what? So what? It's not the end of the world kind of deal. And so that's actually in my book on life behind the badge. That and the chapter on because you have to have a sense of humor in this business. I have a chapter in that book on future felons of America, what not to name your child. Because and cops when they understand, I arrested a guy and helped put him in prison for 2 homicides, and his God-given birth certificate name was Al Capone Al Pacino.
Yeah, right.
You said, why don't you name him Einstein? Because he's gonna grow into his name,
Give him
kind
a
of.
chance, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's even though we face evil and stuff like that, we can't be paranoid. We can't always be somber and thinking worst case scenarios and all that kind of stuff. We can have a very positive outlook and still have fun in life, even when you do some stupid things.
For sure. I love that story. It says an awful lot about your leadership style and your relationship with the people that are, that are reporting you, that you could do something like that. And they felt like they could come in early and razz you about
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Here lies
thank
the
you.
remains of a chair.
Yeah, it was funny.
That's
It
pretty
wasn't
good.
funny when I pulled the trigger. I'm not kidding, man. My
Right.
ears were ringing for 3 days.
I'll bet. I'll bet. But no, it does. You mentioned, one of your books, the Warrior Servant Leader: Life Behind the Badge. That book is it a collection of stories for everybody? I mean, we talked about it last time, but this is a whole different crowd. So tell everybody like what that book is and what it's about, and why you wrote that one.
Yeah, it is. And storytelling is the best way, and they're not simply. A lot of people call them war stories. Um, Here's how the human mind works: you hear in stereo, remember in video, and think in questions. So storytelling, whether it's verbally or in writing, is a great way to share messages with people that they'll remember. So that's kind of what that book is about. I talk about the uh, danger, duty, and disillusion. I actually go into detail of the 5 stages of a law enforcement career and what you should be expecting. And if you're a supervisor and you're seeing these signs and symptoms in a one of your officers, or you're a lieutenant who has a sergeant, red flags should be going up and bells ringing. Something's going on in their life and they're disillusioned, and it may not be about work, it may be about the home life or something like that. But don't be Kermit the Frog and look the other way. And part of that is developing. There's a difference between being the boss and being a leader. And sometimes you have to be the boss. Critical, scenarios, critical incidents. You're barking out orders, and you need immediate, responses. Uh, but the vast majority of your job as a supervisor is to develop your people, guide your people, and protect them from themselves sometimes and doing stupid stuff. Uh, but it's not about um, telling people what to do, because this is how cops are trained. We call it ask, make, tell. I'm sorry, ask, tell, make. I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to tell you to do something. If you don't do it, I'm going to make you do it. And that's normally how we interact with people on the street, bad guys. I'm going to tell you to put your hands behind. I'm going to ask you to put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest, and you don't do it. Now I'm going to tell you. Now I'm going to make you. Well, when you start having ask, tell, make as your go-to model in dealing with interacting with your spouse and your kids and your neighbors and whatnot, your life's going to suck. And so I talk about that in the book, and I have the funny story of the chair. In both books, I a different story though. I had a guy. Did I tell you about the mini Mike Tyson the last time? Where,
You,
yeah,
you did, but you can tell these folks about it too. Like I said, very different listenership in these podcasts.
yeah.
So
So that ask tell make was in full gear. And a sergeant calls me on the radio and tells me to come to this address. It's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I get there, his cruiser's there, a two-man unit cruiser is there, and they're big boys. I mean, they could take care of business. In an ambulance. And I walk in the door. It's a small house, a little bungalow. It's a 99% African American district that I was working in, and I'm a five back then. I'm 5'9", 160 pound white guy in my mid 30s, and Sergeant was a black guy that had been my partner. And when I walk in the front door, there's a plaster wall, not drywall, actual old-fashioned plaster, and there's a pile of it on the floor. And on the other side of the wall, I hear this rhythmic boom hitting the wall, followed by "Oh God," boom, "Oh God," boom, "Oh God." And maybe standing 10 feet away from me is the sergeant with his arms crossed like this, and the two officers. And there was 4 or 5 adults in the little living room. So I go up to the sergeant. I had not, it was a bedroom that was on the other side of this wall, and I'd not looked in the door yet. I go, Sergeant, what can I do? He goes, well, we've been here about an hour and we can't get this guy to go to the hospital. We got to pink slip him. That was a 3-day involuntary commit for mental health evaluation. And we can't get him out. And I go, okay, so what's the ambulance for? And he goes, you or him? I go, like, what? He goes, well, here's what we want. It's a small room. You're the smallest guy on duty tonight. So just go in, dive on top of him. And then Mike and the other guy, the other officer, will come in and they'll try and get control of him and get him cuffed and drag him out. And I knew when he said you, it's either for you or him, is they were going to come in swinging flashlights, uh, head splitters. So I go, well, can I at least talk to him first? And he goes, yeah, sure, knock yourself out. We've been here almost an hour. So I turn the corner and I'm like, holy crap, that's Mike Tyson. No shirt, no shoes, no socks. He's sitting on the floor and he's just rocking back and forth. Catatonic, looking straight ahead, very rhythmic, hitting the wall, oh, and then saying, oh God. And he's sweating profusely. And he looks like Mike Tyson, but 28 years old, but not as heavy as Tyson, but looked like Tyson. So I go in, I kind of squat down, I keep my distance, and I said, hi, my name's Pat. What's your name? Boom, oh God, boom, oh God. Won't even look at me. So I got up, went out and asked who out in the living room. I go, who's his mama? And this older black woman goes, I am. And I said, is your son a religious guy? Kind of guy. And she goes, well, my husband passed away 3 months ago. He was the pastor of our small church, and they were very close. And my son is separated from his wife. He's working 3 jobs. And tonight, he just snapped. And I said, okay. So I go back in, I squat down, and I'm keeping my distance. And I just said one thing to him. I go, who do you pray with? And he stopped rocking and he turned and he looked at me. Now I can see his eyes and his pupils are normal. So he's not on drugs. And he goes, nobody. I go, well, if I agree to pray with you, will you agree that you'll stand up, get dressed, and let me take you to the hospital to see somebody to talk to about what's going on in your head? And he goes, yes, sir. And I'm like, dang, the dude's polite. So he's not on a psycho voyage somewhere. So I go, all right, then get up and get dressed and I'll take you to the hospital. So he did. And when we got out in the car, I put him in the back seat behind the cage. And then I said a short prayer with him. And I even prefaced, I told him, dude, I'm Catholic. We're not big on long prayers. So I just asked God to, watch over him and get him the help that he needed. In Jesus' name, amen. And he said amen. And I took him to the hospital. And the next evening, I stopped by the ER to see, how he was doing because, they'll put him in a psych ward for 3 days. And the doctor goes, "Oh, we didn't admit him to the psych ward. Actually, he was here less than 24 hours. Um, he has pneumonia and had 102 fever. That's why he was sweating so bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Right.
just the stress of everything he was under between his dad dying, who he was really close with, and his being separated from his wife and all that kind of stuff, he basically had a meltdown. And, uh, and that's part of that warrior servant leader mindset of standing up, showing up, and defending what I believe. And what I believe is you don't have to whip everybody's ass in order to get compliance. And I did have a belief. I mean, I had my Catholic faith belief, and this was after I had some transitioning going on in my own head and my own faith walk, and then that servant, put the wants and needs of others for my own, and then being a person of influence and impact, and 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 it worked out, and nobody got hurt. And I don't know the rest of his story because I never went back to the house. Um, did I tell you about the 12-year-old kid that
I
I
don't
did?
think so. I don't
Oh,
think so.
very real quick story. Get sent on a call about a runaway that came home. He's 12 years old, black male, lived in a really shit neighborhood. And I go to take the paper. It's 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm shocked relatively. There was grass in the front yard. Bushes were trimmed, unlike any other house in the neighborhood. I knock on the door. Mom and dad answer the door, which I'm second shock. This is 90% neighborhood of single parent mother families, um, poverty, drugs, violence, the whole works. House is meticulously kept. And they tell me that their son didn't come home from school earlier that day, and they reported him missing. They're not on. They tell me we're not on welfare. We both work. We just can't afford to get out of this neighborhood. In fact, he's not even in public school. We're paying tuition
Wow.
for him to go to a private school, but he's running with the wrong crowd of kids, boys in this neighborhood. And I go, okay, well, is he hurt? No. All right. If he does this again, I'll cancel the broadcast. If he does this again, call us. And I'm ready to leave. And mom looks at me and she goes, we don't know what else to do. Will you talk to him? And I'm thinking, what's a 35-year-old white guy going to say to a 12-year-old black male? It's going to make a difference. And maybe I wasn't 35 yet. I was in my early 30s. And I said, well, of course I'll talk to him, not knowing what I was going to say. I said, but can I just talk to him, just he and I? And she goes, yeah, absolutely. So they had a little sitting room, and took me in there. They brought him in. I'm telling you, I didn't spend 5 minutes with this kid. He never looked at me. He sat in a chair with his head down. I talked to him like a parent. Probably didn't say anything his parents hadn't already said. Did not talk like a cop. Didn't tell him what would happen if he did this again, kind of stuff. And then I left. 18 years later, I'm standing in line at Kroger's, grocery shopping, and girls ringing up my stuff. We had to live in the city if you worked for the city, so I carried my gun with me everywhere off duty. At this time, this was before I was a lieutenant. I was just a street officer. And there's a little old lady behind me and other people behind her. And this voice behind her goes, hey, Welsh, is that you? And I'm thinking, shit, there's only two people are going to call me by my last name because that's what's on your name tag as a
Right.
cop. And so it's either a cop or a bad guy. And I turn and look, and this dude's like 6'4", black male, early 30s. And I'm going, not a cop. And so for all your Marine Corps veterans out there, I pulled a General Mattis. Be polite, be professional, have a plan to kill this guy. Not really kill him, but have a plan to deal with this guy
Right.
if he gets froggy. So I turned, I said, yes, sir. He goes, you probably don't remember me. And I go, no, sir, I don't. And I'm like, I've gone from yellow to red. What am I going to do if he does something stupid with this little old lady? What if he follows me out to the parking lot? I'm just, going to flashing red lights. And he goes, "Hey, when I was 12 years old, you came to my house because I didn't come home from school. I just want to tell you that I graduated from college. I'm married, I have two daughters, and I want to say thank you." And I'm like, "Holy cow!" It was a Paul Harvey moment. The rest of the story, but then I'm also thinking, God, what an asshole I was to just automatically jump to he's a bad guy because that was my mindset. And the warrior servant leader um, journey that I've been on for the last 15 or 20 years helped me transition out of that kind of mindset to one where I can take care of business and I can be situation awareness, but from a different perspective and with different outcomes.
First of all, great stories. I told everybody your stories had stories, so they should be ready. But I love that because I mean, I think all of us suffer from that. We are the sum total of our experiences,
Hmm.
right? I mean, that's who we all are. It's how we decide we're going to act 5 minutes from now. When a situation like that happens, how am I going to react? What am I thinking? That's all based on my own experiences, right? So I think that's something that men have to fight through, in order to get past that mentality. So, the warrior servant leader idea is something that has to be done deliberately. It's not something that just happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
So,
And no, as you've written these books, you've got a podcast, you do all this to help people. Is that part of what you're doing too, is helping guys figure out how to make that change?
yes. Yes. And I do it formally. I travel the country. I'm an adjunct professor with an institute out of the University of Louisville, the Southern Police Institute. So I teach leadership and some other academic topics in command officer development. And so I share this very message in how you do your job as a supervisor or as an executive or as a street officer. And so I do it formally there, but I do have the consulting business that if somebody wants to be coached or mentored, in a 30-day challenge scenario, I'm more than open to doing one-on-one stuff. And then I use writing the books and my Substack on a weekly basis, as well as the podcast to re- repetition's the mother of all learning. So to keep that message out there and alive and people thinking about it and everything, every podcast ends with a challenge. I don't just run my mouth. And I have guests like I had. In fact, I'm dropping it tomorrow. A My guest that I recorded with last week was one of the Army Rangers that was the team leader of. There was four teams in the Battle of Mogadishu, Black Hawk Down,
Hmm.
and Matt Eversman, and he's a co-author with James Patterson on a couple books. And that's how I met him. There's a chapter of a lot of this stuff we're just sharing is actually a chapter in a James Patterson book called Walk the Blue Line.
Yeah.
I was honored to be asked to contribute to that. So yeah, so that's kind of my retirement job, if you will, is to help people that want to pivot from where they're at to where they know they want to be, but don't necessarily have the skill sets or the support system to do it.
Yeah. No, I love the work that you're doing. Let me ask you this. I mean, I don't obviously don't want to give away the whole, secret sauce to all this stuff. I mean, people need to contact you to find this stuff out, buy the book, listen to the podcast, pick these things up. But what's a decent step somebody can take? Who's out there? You got fathers, you got husbands, you got all kinds of guys who, I mean, a lot of the guys that listen to this program are a lot like me. We came up with nothing
Yeah.
and we're self-made. and it's, belief in God and taking risks and fighting battles, man. And you get to a point where you're in your 35 to 55 age range, and man, those battles are piling up.
Yep.
And you've got a lot on your angst, and you are going to react based on the total of your experiences. So, what's a good first step, maybe, or a step for some of these guys to take to start changing
I'll,
the way they look at the stuff?
I'll give you two steps. First one's going to sound morbid. And if you were actually in my leadership training course, uh, this is the very last thing I ask you to do on the last day, and literally take out a piece of paper, and you're going to write down two different things. The first thing I want you to write down is, in one sentence, what do you want people to say about you at your funeral? And I call it a life sentence. What is your life sentence? In one sentence, what do you want people to say about you at your funeral? And when I was first, if I'd known this concept and honestly answered it in 1986, when I first became a cop, or even if you, 1982, when I started practicing law, and if I dropped dead, and you said, "Hey, what would you want people to say about you at your funeral?" in one sentence, I honestly would have said, "I hope they say I was a really good lawyer." And then when I became a cop, I would have honestly said, in my early part of my career, the first 13, 14 years, Pat was a really good cop. In the last 15 years, this has been my life sentence. If you come to my funeral, thank you in advance. Here's what I hope you would say about me in one sentence. Pat impacted my life. Whatever that impact is, that I'm not choosing it for you, but
Yeah.
that you remember me as a person who impacted your life. So write down that life sentence. Now write down three things that you're not doing to live that sentence. Whatever your sentence is, tell me what you're doing. Give me three things you're not doing to live that sentence. So that's a good start.
Nice.
So the second thing you do is now write down three things you're going to start doing to live that sentence. And that's a good starting point because it gives you context and focus, and it's very doable, it's very measurable
Yeah.
if you write down action steps. And those action steps, like for me, every morning, the first thing, I mean, I make my coffee, and I feed the dog. I got a big 95-pound German Shepherd Husky mix, and I take care of that business. And then I literally pick up my phone, and I have an app on my phone. It's called Laudate, Laudate. It's a Catholic app. And I read, take 5 minutes, and I read. There's you can select all sorts of things on there. I read about the saint of the day. So I get grounded in whoever it is. I mean, it could be a saint that's from like, you know, 200 AD. Today, actually, it was three saints, the three archangels, Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. And it gives you, and it's not, and it gives you a history and context and insight and all sorts of stuff. And I find encouragement, I find direction, that I'm not alone, like Saint Augustine or Saint Francis. They were hellions in their early lives, and wait, oh, I can relate to that. And then I read how they had their conversion experiences, those kinds of things. So that's a simple step of what you take in. Because if you're taking in, the first thing is you go to Fox News or CNN, and all they're going to report is bad news. And that's how you start your day off, is the shit that went on the night before,
Right.
that's on the local news. That sets the tone for your day and your mindset. So it's simple steps like that. And then the hard part is doing that intentionally, developing the habit and the lifelong mindset, and action steps to carry you till till they read your or say their life sentence about you. So, and I'm 68, so I'm a lot closer to that life sentence than the 35 and 55-year-olds kind of deal. But if that's your focus and you're grounded in that, then everything springs from that, and you're not living at the mercy of circumstances and emotions, either your own or other people's, because you're locked in on a a life a life sentence. This is how you're going to live.
Yeah.
So,
That's great advice, brother. It really is. I love those steps. I
uh,
really do. Great way for guys to get started. Before we wrap, tell everybody how they can reach you, man. How to get a hold of you, how to find your books, your stuff, best ways.
uh, uh, easiest, best way is, and it's free. I don't charge for my podcast. So, the Warrior Servant Leader Podcast.com. And it has the word the Warrior Servant Leader Podcast.com.
Right.
And then my calendar's on there. Contact info's on there. If you're on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect with you. It's just Pat Welsh, WELSHJD. And it's on LinkedIn is where my community newsletter is at. And then on Substack, same thing, at Pat Welsh JD. And I do a little bit more in depth than I do on LinkedIn on the Substack. But
Nice.
yeah, any one of those, they all have the same contact info, and my schedule calendar for consultations are on there. And those consultations, first 30 minutes are free. I'm not, yeah, I want to make money, but I'm more about giving back and helping people find their way.
Sure. Sure. Appreciate that very much. All right. I will make sure that stuff's in the show notes for you. I love when we can get action steps for the guys who are listening to this. I really do, because it really helps us. Men need action steps, man.
Oh
We need
yeah,
we need a how do we start? Okay, start here,
yeah,
and go here. So it really, really helps us get moving. As we do close out, I want to, give you the floor. I mean, you've unpacked a lot today, and honestly, I could talk to you for another 2 hours, man, and not get tired of it. So, but we do need to wrap. So as we do
yeah.
that, is there anything I didn't ask you? Is there
Yeah.
anything that we talked about that maybe you want to double down on, or maybe a parting thought that you haven't given everybody yet, a word of advice, anything like that for
Yeah.
the
You
husbands,
covered
fathers that are listening? Go for it, brother.
you covered everything, but here would be my parting advice, but just based on, like you said, my life experiences and whatnot, that if you study history, philosophy, theology, scripture, or even just the experiences of other people, every single one of them will confirm, in my opinion, that if you have a warrior, servant, leader mindset, you will stand in the gap against evil and everything that is wrong with this world and be a better person for it. And you'll leave your world, your space, better because of it.
Fantastic, brother. I appreciate that parting shot. Folks, the warrior servant leader who is showing us all how to stand in the gap. Pat Welsh. Pat, thank you, man, for coming on this podcast and sharing your stories and your advice and your programs and your mission, brother. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Rory. I appreciate you a lot. Thanks, man.
Thank you, man. Uh, Gentlemen, this has been another incredible episode of the Power Man Podcast. The reason we bring these incredible men with these powerful messages on here is because we are united in hoping that you find your power to become a better protector, a better provider, better leader tomorrow than you are today, to become a better father, a better husband, a better man tomorrow than you are today. And the reason that we want that for you is because you matter. It's because you have value. And at some point, you just have to believe it. Until next time.